Great. All right, moving on to the third right. So the right to transparency about conflicts of interest between the sponsor, the regional center, and the developer. And this is probably one of the most important rights because it's an area where historically a lot of investors have lost money in projects because they failed to really recognize how dangerous a conflict of interest can be. Ahmed, you've been in this space for a long time. You've seen, a lot of projects go well. You've seen some projects go not so well. Tell us kind of what is this conflict of interest and why is it so critical now that it's required to be disclosed? That even though investors can now see it, how do you go from, okay, there is a conflict here, to actually internalizing how real or significant of a risk it really can be to an investment?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're looking through a project's offering documents, one of the key things to pay attention to is, okay, who are the different entities here, right? Who's involved? Who is the regional center? Who is this project sponsor, and who's the ultimate developer? And it's such a key point, of the due diligence process to understand who's going to be basically working on your behalf and who's going to be looking after their best interests, right? And at the end of the day, you should be assuming, just like yourself as an investor, when you're doing due diligence, you're looking after yourself, you're looking after your best interest. So will every other party involved within this transaction, okay? And so what happens is, when you're expecting, the regional center program was created by USCIS to act on investors' behalf, right? The regional center acts as a conduit between investors who are looking to get their green card and then developers who are in the United States putting together these projects. And it's the regional center's job to ensure that everything goes according to plan, right? That everything goes well, that the investors get their green cards on one piece, and then also that they're putting together projects in a responsible, safe way so that the investors have a chance at getting their money back as well, right? Now, what happens if two of these parties become one? So one of the most common conflicts of interest we'll see is where a regional center is also the developer of the deal, right? So now the investor is placing their money into the hands of the regional center, who's going to be responsible for it, but the regional center themselves are taking the money for the development. So if the development goes south, they're unable to basically pay back the new commercial enterprise, which the regional center is in control of. Who is going to sue on behalf of the investors to get that money back? They're certainly not going to sue themselves, right? And so this is what has led to a lot of big problems in the past, is investors are just left with no recourse, because whereas the regional center should be acting on their behalf and really trying to look after their rights, that's not happening because they're also the developer, and they're certainly not going to shoot themselves in the foot, so to speak, on behalf of the investor.
Yep, exactly. Go ahead, Mike.
And I just add there, and we had another webinar where we discussed this in detail, is that if everything goes right, quite often the conflicts of interest really don't matter. If everybody's winning, they're winning together. You really just find the conflicts, and where this is the most exposed is when things go wrong and there's a downside event. Because if somebody's on both sides of the transaction and their money's on one side and your money's on the other and they're in control of it, human nature, they're going to act in their best interest, not in yours. So again, there can be very good deals where the developer is the regional center, and that absolutely works. It should be disclosed. You should understand the risk and what type of separation there is. And that's why we put it in the Bill of Rights, because understanding what that conflict is and how it's going to be managed is critical if there is a conflict.